Good morning, everyone. It is so good to see you here. I'm saying hello to those of you who have been jumping on from all over the world. Little bit sad because I don't see anyone from Kenya yet, but I'm determined that I will. But there are people here from the United States, from Northern Ireland, from Wales, from England, just all over the world, from Sweden and from Canada, from the Netherlands. Hello, Stephanie. It is good to see you. And of course, there are people now beginning to jump on from Winnipeg. We're a little bit slow here. We don't like to spring out of bed. Well, I shouldn't say we. Most people tend to get out of bed a little bit more slowly here in the ice and cold. I, however, am still springing up at 5:30 in the morning in case I miss anything. And I sort of think that's my way of living with hope. And we're inviting you all today into this journey of hope with us. Even though we're going to have prophetic conversation, some of it can be difficult, some of it is easy, some of it frees you up, some of it challenges. It is still a journey of hope without wavering that God has called us into in this day and in this hour. And we are looking for prophets all over the world. Anne-Marie says they stay in bed on their phone. Okay, we're not going to give out people's secrets, are we? But welcome to you and welcome to the journey with us. We are all on this journey together. And I'm so glad this morning to have two of my favorite people in the whole world, Mark Birch-Machin and Irene from England, from the north of England and from the south. I'm just, yeah, when I see your two faces in the window, it's like, okay, now I can be quiet. We know that's not true, but but I can be quiet because they are coming today full of goodness and full of revelation and full of the intent of the heart of the Father for each one of us. So Irene, let's start off with you this morning. Start to serve up for us some of the things that God has been putting on your heart.
Well, good morning. Well, it feels weird to say good morning because it's afternoon for me, but
it is.
Hello, everybody. God has been speaking to me a lot through revelation in the past few weeks, which I always find a little bit stressful, I have to say. But what jumped out for today is Revelation 3 verse 10 that says, because you have kept my word about patient endurance, I will keep you from the hour of trial that is coming on the whole world to try those who dwell on the earth. And then it says, verse 11, I am coming soon. Hold fast what you have so that no one may seize your crown. And those verses were highlighted to me because God has been speaking to me a lot about perseverance. And I feel like we talk a lot about, at least in the world I am, we talk a lot about signs and wonders as a sign of an apostolic culture. But we tend to forget that actually the first apostolic grace is the grace of perseverance. And that I believe that this is a season where we're in, where God is calling us to persevere, that it's a season of warfare and of preparation, and where God is kind of stretching our muscles, which means that he's helping us build endurance, but we can't build that endurance unless we kind of go through the trials. Nobody builds endurance just by doing nothing difficult. You have to build your strength. And I believe that the way we build our strength and our perseverance is by kind of gazing on his face, seeking him and waiting on him and waiting on his word and feeding on his word. And I really believe that there's an encouragement for us to just kind of dig into the word. And for me, it was manifested by, let's read Revelation again, even if it's a difficult one, even if it's, actually there's truth, there's revelation in it. There's something that is stretching my muscles in this season because I'm going to need it for the season to come. So it's an encouragement for us to just persevere.
Yeah, it's really important that we're listening to the words that the prophets are speaking right now. Sometimes there's such a feast that our attention span tends to fade off, and weaken. But God is saying some very clear things right now that have to do with holding fast, which have to do with perseverance, with have to do with being strong and firm and knowing what we believe and why. Mark, just take us a bit further from what Irene has been sharing.
Yeah, and I'm pleased that Irene have got the whole of the of England covered here from the north to the south. So I'm very happy about that from top to bottom. But yeah, Irene, I just like the fact that you're in Revelation and we're in the year 2022, and Revelation has 22 chapters. So 2022 Gregorian calendar, Revelation has 22 chapters. And so you're right on message, really. So, my feeling is because you're in the right book, you could read anything in Revelation. It'll be right on timing and everything else. So I think that's great. And actually, I just want to I think what you just said there about perseverance really comes on to some of the things that we were talking about in the green room before. Oh, and before I forget, wisdom is mentioned 222 times in the Bible, if it's the New King James Version. So 2022 really fits in there as well. So 222, wisdom. We need a lot of wisdom to navigate this time that Rebecca was talking about. And so you've been talking about perseverance there, Irene. And I just quickly looked up because I know it's in the Bible, and I just looked it up, just I knew it was in Romans somewhere, but Romans 5:3 connects perseverance, character, and hope. And Rebecca was talking about hope and how we have these things are actually. And Rebecca, you get up early because actually you're in hope. You're in hope for what the Lord's going to do. Yeah. I'm one of those people that actually annoyingly, within a few seconds of the day, I'm actually full on 100% in. There is no lead-in time for me. So yeah, it's either delight or really annoying. So you can figure out which one. So Romans 5:3 about perseverance, character, hope is the fact that there's an aspect at the minute where character is really showing through, and also the lack of character showing through. So this is an opportunity in 2022 to actually choose character. Because we need that character upon which that gifting will sit on. Yeah, because a good character will actually extend the point at which these gifts can reach. But you can be gifted in all lots of things. But if you don't have the character, your reach, your stretch, your influence becomes compromised, particularly in the face of challenges. Because without character, when you face challenges, you, depending on where you are on the orphan scale, you throw your toys out of the pram, or you quit and run away, which is really annoying if you're part of a team and somebody's relying on you, that as soon as it gets tight, as soon as the heat goes up in the kitchen, as it were, you run away, or you throw your toys out of the pram and you run away. And so because of that, then your character or it may be lack of character then not only impacts on yourself because you run away from the place you're meant to be, but you're letting other people's down as well. And so this kind of thing about character, I call people orphaning out on me because there is an element at the minute, and we can touch on offence a little bit down the line, but I just did some teaching for Rebecca's network on Invictus on offence, and Erin on Tuesday, tune into that, talked about offence. And actually taking offence is what happens when our character is threatened. Because if we're secure in ourselves, we begin to talk less about me, I, self, and we're content with the bigger picture and others flourishing. When our character is, as it were, under threat, then we begin to think about ourselves, and then we are more easily offended. So if you're, as it were, let's say, prophets, apostles on this call today. I mean, prophets, we need good character, but also apostles need good character. Apostles and prophets working together. And so I think apostles in particular, their identity, their character is being challenged at the minute because of their emerging out of COVID, not really sure what's going on. And because of that, almost there's a tendency, and this is kind of a little bit of a warning if you're an apostle, tendency to stop stamp collecting. All right. Stop stamp collecting people to join your network, to join your movement, because actually what you're seeing is their gifting rather than their heart. All right. So the emphasis should be on heart alignment, rather not on gift alignment, where you're seeing someone for the gifts that they have, and you're looking at them thinking that could serve my network, my influence, and because of that, that then becomes all about self. And then we get into this whole thing about, character and everything else, is the fact that character is actually born out of dwelling in love with Jesus, in his love. And then we're more concerned about seeing others flourish rather than our own empires being built. Anyway, I've talked long enough there, so I'll hand back.
No, this is such an important thing to be talking about, not just in the whole apostolic world, but actually in the whole of Christendom. We're seeing more and more on social media and on different areas where every one of us is being encouraged to build our empires, in quotations. And it's gone past, in many cases, the apostolic grace of building something that honors God. And it's actually an empire kind of mindset. And there you hear language all the time about I, and an overuse of the word I. In fact, sometimes I've just sat back and read things and counted how many times a particular person is using the word I. And you're actually shedding some incredible light on why that is. Irene, do you want to jump in there?
I really love what you said, Mark, about choosing heart alignment rather than gifting alignment. And I believe that this is one of the keys for the year that we're entering as well, is to make sure that we're aligning with the whole of our hearts, not just the bits that, it's going to help me to serve so and so. So I'm just going to align with half of my heart, but I'm still having like an idea of what I'm going to do next and how I'm going to step outside of, or up of this situation that I'm in. I really believe that there's something about the heart, and there's something that we're going to start doing in my little prophetic community, which is to start working on heart matters more than gifting. We're still going to develop the gifting, but actually if the heart is not in the right place, if the character is not built, then we're having flaky prophets, apostles, and beyond, like all the fivefolds of flaky Christians, and I don't think that Jesus is coming back for a flaky bride. So we need to strengthen ourselves.
Yeah. Mark, how do we go about getting rid of the temptation of all that is shallow and fluffy and marshmallowy and, ego stroking in our world?
That's great. I mean, Rebecca, you know me well enough. The fact that actually I spend a lot of time soaking in the being undone in Jesus, and actually, as a scientist, you see the processing of your DNA being repaired and seen to as it is being undone. All right, that's how little faults in us get repaired naturally, in our body. So how much more with our spiritual DNA is the fact that actually there are always things that actually the world can throw at us, and we can either make a home for them, or we can actually chuck them out. Say, actually, I don't own that. That doesn't suit me. But for those things that kind of slip under the radar and all this kind of stuff, then it's a continual process of really just being undone, being unraveled, and letting God say, well, actually, Mark, I've come across this. Do you really want this? Because it looks pretty ugly, and actually it doesn't suit you. It is so last year. In fact, this was never in fashion, so get rid of it. It doesn't suit the color of your eyes. Let's just get rid of it. And so, so it's almost on a daily basis that we can keep that process going. And then, every day has its opportunities, as Rebecca was saying, opportunities for hope, opportunities for success, to overcome, and then also opportunities to actually resist things and not take things up. Like offense, there's a good one, is the fact that, any one day, I mean, depending on where I am, I have many opportunities to be offended. It depends whether you take that frisbee of opportunity and actually whether you engage with it or whether you overlook it. All right, because Proverbs 19 verse 11 says, "A person's wisdom yields patience." Okay, we're in the year of wisdom, 222 times in the Bible. "It is to one's glory to overlook an offense." So prophetically, we're very good at seeing stuff. All right, so you can see offense. Right, I've seen it. What do I do with it? Do I overlook it, or do I focus on it? And then, because of my lack of character, do I then begin to respond to it with offense because actually myself has been assaulted, and then automatically I find myself within the boxing ring of offense? I was never in that ring to begin with, but now because of the way I've acted, because of the lack of character, I find myself now in this boxing ring of offense where the only thing I can react with is offense, which then starts a whole cascade and everything else. And, so from that point of view, it's kind of keeping those accounts short, finding out where, letting God repair us. And then from that place of actually being secure in him and our identity in him, therefore our identity is safe. Therefore, I can't be threatened by offense. Therefore, then that doesn't put me in the boxing ring of offense. And then actually that allows me to be generous, outgoing, expanded, which is all that we want to be in our daily lives.
That's right. We are trying to deal with everything that contains us. And this business of offense actually is a real revelation of where we stand. If you were to draw a chart, orphan, not orphaned, that the business of offense actually just shows you exactly where you are on that journey. And yes, we all fall into it, but not all of us have such difficulty with it that we get trapped in it, And I think what God is trying to do is to show us the areas in our lives where we are trapped and where we are contained, because God wants us out. He wants us out. He wants us in an arena that is expansive, where there are no hindrances and where he is the only hindrance to everyone. We're supposed to trip over his goodness, his love, his words,
Yes.
Those things. They're supposed to bring change. Irene, you talked a little bit about how joy expands you and how offense, contains you. Can you talk a bit more about that this morning? Because I think it's important.
For me, one of the things that has been really important is learning and understanding that I can always get hurt, but then offense is a choice. Yeah. So if I choose offense, then I'm getting myself in a tiny slippery slope that will then end up hurting me first, but also hurting the people around me, and also taint the way I prophesy. And I believe that I just don't want that to happen. So I've been working really hard on making sure that joy is always an option. So yes, I'm going to get hurt. And yes, it may take time to get out of the hurt. Sometimes forgiveness takes time. Sometimes processing takes time. And I think it's okay to take the time. But if I let myself go into choose offense, then all of a sudden I'm closing my box. And as Mark was saying, I'm finding myself in a boxing ring and I have to defend myself. When actually, if in my process of dealing with the pain, I choose, okay, at the end of the day, I trust God. At the end of the day, I know who I am. And at the end of the day, I can choose joy. And I'm going to find joy, because joy is actually what brings me back to who I am, what brings me back to the heart of the Father, what brings me back to the heart of worship, and what brings me back to the fullness of who God wants me to be. But it is, I think, a discipline. I'm not going to pretend that it's an easy one. It's a discipline that takes time. It's a discipline that takes people around you. And I have been extremely, extremely, extremely blessed by people who would not let me fall into offense. Rebecca, thank you very much. And who would kick my bum out of it when needed. And you need those friends. And I believe that in the season where we need to kind of grow our muscles and our strengths and everything, we need to be together. There's nothing more dangerous for me than the isolated Christian. It scares me. I think it's dangerous for themselves and for the people around them. That's not how God wanted us to be. We grow because we are in communities with people who know us, who can challenge us, who can tell us, hey, you are not acting like the fullness of who God wanted you to be. You're acting like an idiot right now. You have a choice. You still have a choice. So yeah, I would say choose joy.
That is such an important thing to remember, that the joy of the Lord is our strength, but it's not just our strength during when times are good. It becomes a weapon, a pathway to health, a pathway to hope, all of those things during difficult times. And this is what God has us in training for right now, is for these sober times, how to live well in sober times, which is sort of an awful word, but it's during those times that we learn to find the doorway to the house of wine, to the house of joy. And we learn that it's not just a one static door that we have to push really hard, that it's well oiled, because there are things that we learn, wisdom from God that we learn, say in the house of mourning or the house of difficulty. And there are things that we need and we learn in the house of joy. So we, as prophets of God, need to learn to live well in both of those situations. And that establishes us well in the heart of God, because we begin to understand his ways and what he wants for us. Mark, let's just shift gear a little bit. And if we've not got that much longer, but if we go over a little bit, I don't think it will be a crisis. But share just a little bit of what you shared on Soul about this coming year that you're sensing, if you could.
Yeah, no, that's very kind, Rebecca. Before I do that, can I just throw in, Irene is absolutely right about Deuteronomy 25:18 says, when Israel was weary and worn out, the Amalekites met you on your journey and cut off all who were lagging behind. In other words, don't be cut off from the body.
Just don't.
I mean, and there's another scripture as well in that.
Well,
so yeah,
you have to say then, don't lag behind.
Exactly. That's right. Don't do your own thing, your own Lone Ranger and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So yeah, no, absolutely. This year is a very exciting year. It's a year for reformers. We're all, and you're thinking, well, that's probably someone else. No, it's you. Whoever's listening to this broadcast, particularly because the way Rebecca shapes it, you are all reformers. So what are reformers? Reformers are they're pioneers, they're not settlers.
Yes.
Yeah? They're entrepreneurs, they're not corporate management. They're discoverers of the new. And we've talked about, Rebecca just said, we want, God wants us out. He wants us out of where we are. And the fact that, very much, I'm very much a prophet, apostle, prophet type of thing. So John 9:7 says, that the blind man went to the pool of Siloam. He sent him there. And as he went, he could see. So actually being sent out of where we are allows us to see more. Does that make sense? So really, we just need to get out more. And then we start seeing. But anyway, I'm just going to give you 7 bullet points, all right? So the reformers are coming and are rising. We're reformers. God's calling us to rise, to come out of where we've been hiding, to come out in 2022. It's a time of harvest. Miracles, we're going to get more visible because of that. The reform, we will actually be part of seeing stepwise change in growth. It's almost like what's called a hockey stick growth, is the fact that actually God is pointing out to us a point of inflection. When you see a hockey stick, it goes along and then it goes up. In entrepreneur language, companies go bubbling along, then all of a sudden there's a point of inflection, and then their profits begin to take off, their growth takes off. For those who can see, all right, and if we can't go to the pool of Siloam.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, so we need to get out so we can see. There is a point of inflection coming in your church, your business, where you're placed, society, politics, everything else, where there's a point of inflection and you begin to take off in 2022. We're meant to value that process. As doors are closing, the Isaiah 22:22 famous passage for transition anyway, but in 2022, it's very pertinent. Value the journey between the doors, those that are closing and those that are opening. Yeah. and stare ahead at those open doors. Otherwise, you walk. If you're looking back at the closed ones, you get a bruised nose. All right, let's not walk into stuff. Revelation is the catalyst of reformation. If we're going to be reformers, that revelation, Irene, that you were talking about, 22 chapters, it is the catalyst of reformation. And actually, the things that would threaten that in this year of 2022, the enemy would send fixers along, people that will fix stuff for you, which will be, you'll recognize them by the fact that they'll use I and self quite a lot. Going back to Rebecca's point, I can fix that. I can do that for you. And you hand over your calling, destiny, and purpose to them. And then you wonder why you're not stepping into your calling, destiny, and purpose, because you've handed it over to the fixers. Yeah. All right. And if the enemy can't get you with the fixers, they'll get you with the flatterers, those that deal with flattery. And they will actually cause you to sell out your amazing God-given purpose, destiny, and calling to something which is so low level, it is man-achievable. Because that's what you're going for. You're going from God-pleasing to man-pleasing. You're going from what God can do to what man can do when you listen to people who flatter you, because they will want you to get you from the place where you are to the place where actually they want you to be, because they can control you. The solution to this is going back to that love place, that total dependency on Jesus, and where it says in the scripture, in the Psalms, that God gives us our next breath. He sustains us. So I won't give the story, but basically the bottom line is keep our head in the mouth of the Lion of Judah. So all we can hear is the ruach of God and the roar of the lion. And that will prevent us from having our head turned, and the pun is intended, to the left or to the right by those who would try and fix and those who would try and flatter, as we are staring ahead with the sound of heaven in our ears to the calling, destiny, and purpose we have in 2022.
Wow. Irene, anything to throw in there?
It was also wonderful. And I believe it. I claim that reformer word for myself. One of the things that God said for this year for me as well was all about love, where you finished, Mark, and how we are called to come back to the heart of love, because that's in God's love that we find who we are, and that we find our destiny, and not in anyone else's love, like not flattery, not man-made boxes or whatever. It's all in the heart of God that we need to go. And it's a radical love. It's not fluffy. It's not cute. It's radical, and it changes the world. It changes us first, but it changes the world. And we're on a mission to change the world. So there's no sitting quietly and waiting for things to happen. Like, we're moving on.
We are moving on. And you know what? I am so thankful to you guys for being on here today and sharing your wisdom, sharing your insight. And I love the emphasis on revelation and the emphasis on the eyes. This morning I got up and I read about how MAF, which is Mission Aviation Fellowship, for those of you who don't know, in Kenya, the country that I grew up with, they're getting ready to restart or relaunch after the COVID business, their eye clinics, their mobile eye clinics. And so I just felt, oh, wow, this is something you're saying to us today. God just delivers something in a full package and in language that we understand. But God is saying, get ready right now, do the hard work. Pay attention, get yourself discipled, work on your character, because there's coming very shortly an opening of your eyes. And where you've had them where they've become clouded with disease or offense or anything else that we've been talking about, God is getting ready to open your eyes and to show you things that your heart has been longing for, and to show you how to walk forward in this coming year with yourself and him, but also with others round about you. And there is a new path being plowed. There is a new trail being cut through difficulties. And I can see sometimes that the difficulties don't go away, but we learn to cut a new trail when we are willing to pay the price, when we're willing to do the work, when we're willing to change our language so that we don't offend everyone. All of these things work together for good to those that love God. So thank you very much, Mark and Irene, for being here and for sharing so deeply and fully. For those of you who don't know, both Mark and Irene teach at the Invictus Global Academy, the Prophetic Academy that we have, and it won't be that long, and we'll be advertising for year 2, and we will be doing another intake for year 1. So keep your eyes open onto our website and on social media, and we'll have more about that for you before too long. God bless you all from all over the world, and we hope to see you soon on Tuesday. God bless you. Bye-bye.